To the point. It is Tuesday, February 23rd, 2021. Thank you to those of you joining us on the GBN Grenada Broadcasting Network's Facebook page, the Grenada Broadcasting Network's YouTube channel, the website www.gbn.gd, GBN TV channel 7, 11 and 20. Good morning to the listeners of Classic 105.5, 105.9 and to the viewers on the Party Grenada and Go to Feds Facebook page and Party Grenada's website. Good morning to each and every one of you. This morning, my virtual guest is the NDC's caretaker for St. Patrick West, Mr. Joseph Andall. Good morning, Mr. Andall.
Good morning to you, Blossom. Good morning to all of the listeners and viewers.
Thank you for joining us this morning. Happy to have you.
Always a pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
Especially here. Yeah.
So let's get right into the discussion, Mr. Andall. Let's start with some of the, or I should say one topic that has generated a lot of discussion in the public domain, especially over the past few weeks, the repercussions from development projects. We have seen a lot of people from different parts of the island actually speaking out as to the effects that it's having on their communities, on the environment and so on. What are the concerns of the National Democratic Congress in relation to that?
First of all, let me say that the National Democratic Congress is in full support of development in its broadest sense. What we would like to see, though, and what you would get from an NDC government is development that is in tune with our national developmental objectives, development in harmony with our natural environment. We believe that you can have development without engaging in massive degradation and destruction of your natural environment and your natural heritage. Some people try to portray it as one or the other. We recognize that you cannot eat your cake and have all of it. We know that in the quest for development, in the quest for meaningful job opportunities for our people, revenue for government, and so on, that there will be some collateral damage. What we have to do, however, is to manage it in such a way that whatever fallout there is minimal, it is managed, it is planned. That is our concern. Good? So when we look at what is taking place, for example, in La Sagesse, we are not against any developer, be they foreign or local, engaging in a project that would bring employment to our people, that would contribute to economic development. What we are saying, though, is that all necessary safeguard measures must be put in place to ensure that we minimize the damage to the environment and to our national heritage. We have a responsibility to leave Grenada a better place for future generations than what we met. And if we just go about in this willy-nilly, ad hoc, project-based approach to development, I'm afraid that we'll be doing a great disservice to the present inhabitants of our country, but more so to those coming after us, for whom we'll be leaving a big mess. Yeah.
What would you say is the problem? Because it's not one project that is causing discomfort in a community. It seems to be 2, 3, 5 projects across the island, different parts of the island, that are causing these concerns, environmental concerns. What do you think is missing? What is not being done? What's the problem?
The problem is that those who are in authority, those who have the power to regulate and to control, have been found to be almost criminally negligent in their approach towards governing country and towards regulating and monitoring those projects. Remember that no investor makes laws in Grenada. No investor gives himself or herself permission to build in a particular area or to do certain things or to violate laws, regulations, norms, and so on. So ultimately, it is the government that has to take the necessary steps to ensure that adequate measures are put in place, to ensure that where necessary, the relevant environmental and social impact assessment studies are done to minimize whatever damage will inevitably occur to the areas where these projects are being implemented. So it is government's responsibility, one, to make sure that the correct regulatory framework is in place. Two, that they are rigorously observed. And three, corrective measures taken immediately in cases where breaches may occur.
How can the NDC deal with this situation? Let's say there's an election. Today's the 23rd. Let's say there's an election on the 24th of February, 2021. The NDC is victorious in the elections. They take over the government. How can the NDC rectify these issues?
One of the first things we'll have to do, in fact, even before an election, we have already begun the process of engaging some of the developers of those different projects. So one of the first things that we have to do is to dialogue with investors and potential investors. But even before that, we need to make sure that our investment policy is well spelled out, is well known, that the people who we have to monitor projects and their implementation are properly trained and equipped to do the job. We must ensure that the physical planning unit is insulated from political pressure, because very often the institutions are there on paper, the personnel are there, but sometimes they are bullied, pushed aside, threatened, and as a result of that, a number of things happen that should not happen. So NDC will ensure the independence of the regulatory institutions. We'll also ensure that they are professionally staffed. We will see to it that party political considerations are minimized, if not totally eliminated, in the process of selecting personnel to fill the necessary positions. Good. We will also make sure that a proper land use policy is in place. Everybody likes to talk about land use policy, but time is running out for us. Space is also running out for us. If you notice, most of the construction that we do in Grenada is horizontal, sideways. Some people are against building up. Some people believe that in a country with very limited land space like ours, going up a little bit might be the solution. So going forward, we may have to look at amending certain bits of legislation to accommodate buildings of a particular height in specified areas, of course, with the necessary precautions regarding earthquake, making buildings earthquake-proof, and so on. All right, so stakeholder engagement, protection of the national patrimony, making sure that a proper regulatory framework is in place and that they are adhered to. Because there's no point in having things on paper and you do nothing to enforce them. That is pointless. You see, countries like ours are especially challenged. Everybody knows about the talk about climate change and global warming, its effects on small island states and so on, coastal erosion, all of those things. But that makes it even more imperative that we manage the little that we have more prudently. It is inexcusable for us to surrender our national sovereignty, for us to surrender access to our beaches by Grenadians in the name of so-called development. We welcome developers, we welcome investors. However, they have to abide by local conditions. They have to take measures to ensure that whatever they do will not be inimical to the interests of our people. And an NDC government will be at the forefront of defending our national sovereignty, our national heritage, national patrimony, and the right of Grenadians to be first-class citizens in our own country.
Another issue that I want to get the NDC's take on is the current impasse between government and teachers and public officers. It has been almost 4 weeks now, more than 3 weeks, that this issue has been going on. How can the NDC, if it was in power, again, election is the 24th of February, NDC gets into power, how can the NDC solve this current issue?
We are quite clear that the way to achieving a solution to industrial problems is through dialogue between trustworthy partners. And the NDC will be a trustworthy partner. We will not be engaging in mamagism, tomfoolery, and false promises simply to get elected into office. And then you get elected into office and you find that it is not possible to fulfill those grandiose promises. So that would be the first step. The NDC will set up mechanisms to build trust between government and the public sector unions. The NDC will respect the collective bargaining process. The NDC will reverse this trend of making the established civil service irrelevant and redundant, of undermining the trade unions through the extensive use of contract work, even in areas such as the healthcare sphere, education in particular, where for the most part, you need established people who feel a sense of belonging, a sense of vocation, profession, because that is what they have dedicated their lives to. So we are going to respect the collective bargaining process. We have already committed to observing the constitutional requirement that established government workers be given their pension and their gratuity. This is not negotiable. It has been upheld by the courts in more than one instance, and we are committed to working with that. So we believe that trust is of paramount importance. If in any relationship, whether it be a romantic relationship, a business relationship, a workplace relationship, where there is no trust, where there is no mutual trust, where there is no mutual respect, then you are headed for massive problems.
Vaccine. The vaccine rollout has begun in Grenada with the AstraZeneca vaccine. This week, government has started mass vaccination of our frontline workers. Where does the NDC stand with the current vaccination plan program? Plans to get vaccinated? You, acting political leader, any member of the party?
Personally, I have not yet had the opportunity to be vaccinated. When the opportunity arises, I will take a shot, although I don't like being juked. But I think that there's a lot of misinformation out there, and that misinformation is playing on the natural fears that people have about something new. But people must understand that vaccines, or at least the concept of vaccines, has been around for hundreds of years, literally hundreds of years. We have had measles shots, tetanus shots, rubella shots, polio shots, and so on. And as in everything else, there will always be some people who suffer allergic reactions. Occasionally, the result may even be fatal. And that is very unfortunate. It is very sad, especially for those immediately affected by it. However, in an overall sense, vaccines have done probably more than anything else that man has invented or developed to improve the quality of life of billions of people worldwide, and, well, since we all eventually die, saving lives is a little bit of, hyperbolic language, but for want of a better word, saving lives. So we'd encourage people to take advantage of the opportunity if presented. We'd also like to urge the authorities to be patriotic and to see all Grenadians as equal citizens. We are urging and asking that there be no favoritism in terms of who gets to be vaccinated and who is denied. All right? We also...
Yes, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry.
That's okay, go ahead.
Yes. And we know that over the past year or so, that the World Health Organization and certain other international bodies have contributed by the way of grants, soft loans, and so on, monies to mitigate against the problems generated by the COVID-19 pandemic. And I think it would be good for the citizens of the country to be reassured about what has been done with those monies. How have they been allocated? In what areas of the economy or the society have they been channeled, and how have they been managed? That is very important because we have a history in this country, especially under this regime, of international assistance coming into the country in times of crisis and being woefully mismanaged, and in many cases, worse than mismanaged. So we have some concerns about that.
Is it that you're not seeing where it's going, or you just want detail? When I say you, I mean the NDC. You just want detailed information as to how the $5 were spent.
We would like to know how they were spent, who was responsible for disbursing them, because accountability for people's money is very, very important. If you do not use it wisely, very often when you need it the most, you don't get it. It is like somebody who, in local parlance, likes to bad beg. They can do without it, but they see you and they figure they have a chance to hustle your dollar, so they hustle your dollar, and you see them run go and buy a cigarette with it or run go and gamble with it. And the next time when they genuinely need it, you tell yourself, you ain't getting caught twice by the same trickster. Yeah.
What if the current administration says, don't worry about where it's spent, just know we put it to good use? We've heard that statement in a recent parliament sitting when an inquiry was made about repurchasing the shares for Grenlec. What if that's the response this time? Don't worry where we spend that $10. Just know we spend it properly. How does the NDC respond to that?
We cannot accept that as a party, and neither should we accept that as a nation. We are not talking about the cabinet ministers or the prime minister using their personal funds to do what they want with it. Anybody who asks me what I did with the money that I got from selling 100 pounds of cabbage, maybe my wife can ask me that. Anybody else will be out of order. But if I am put in charge of managing the community center in my village, and people come, they rent the facility, and I have fiduciary control over the funds, then I have an obligation to explain what was done with the money, how and where it was stored, and how, when, and to what purposes it was disbursed. So we must not accept that level of arrogance and disrespect from our leaders, regardless of whether we support them, we are members or supporters of the party or not. That is setting the stage for a highway to mass corruption. We have seen too much of that in our little country over the past few years.
Has the NDC ever considered making a formal request for information like this by way of a letter, an official letter, whether it's to the Prime Minister's office, Ministry of Finance or so? And I'm not just talking the COVID-19 aid funds that COVID-19 aid we've received, but other situations. Has the NDC ever considered that or done that in the past?
There have been situations, don't come readily to mind now, but there have been situations where we have written to government and in some cases, international organizations regarding various issues. And this is something that we are actively considering, not only on that issue, but on other matters of national importance. For example, the electoral office and its operations come to mind. For months, literally, some of us have been trying to get information regarding the electoral list, and whether it's through technical difficulties or otherwise, we have been coming up against, want of a better word, against a wall. So these are things that we are concerned about, and these are things that we are going to engage other stakeholders with. Because one thing we realize is that the affairs of state must not be seen as the exclusive domain of political parties. We have civil society organizations, we have different interest groups, we have individuals with special needs who sometimes lack a voice, but who, in concert with others, can get things done. So one of the things that we have been doing is reaching out to different sectors of our society. We have already started, and we plan to continue with that, to make sure that we build a coalition of forces to temper or cut off the excesses of government and to lay a sort of blueprint for the way forward. We are not arrogant to the point of believing that we have all the solutions. We know that there are lots of brilliant minds out there outside of the NDC fold waiting to be engaged, and we are reaching out to them, and we are hoping that we can pool our resources, our ideas, and put them to the cause of building a better and more inclusive Grenada for all of the citizens and future generations.
Do you see that happening regularly, a concern about party versus government? Is this a situation where it is a cause for concern, or are you just hoping that it does not raise its head?
Well, it is something that has been entrenched by this regime over the past 20 to 30 years. And it is not good for the country. First of all, it creates a massive level of inequality among different sections of the citizenry. Let us take the question of public sector jobs, for example. Years ago, you wanted a job in a particular ministry, you applied to the relevant ministry or to the Public Service Commission. Now today, the practice may still exist on paper, but we all know that the reality is that to get a government job or a government contract these days, you have to go to the office of the MP, which itself has morphed into the party office of the ruling party. And what we are seeing here now is that the citizens of our country are subsidizing the operations of a political party, because the people who are employed in those so-called parliamentary offices, they are basically doing party work, canvassing voters list, holding party meetings, and generally carrying out party work on government time, on government premises, with government resources. The NDC is committed to stopping this. We believe that it is an abuse of the taxpayers' dollars. We believe that each political party has an obligation to provide for itself without defrauding the state. So whenever we get into office, we are going to ensure that the MP office remains the office of the Member of Parliament for the particular constituency, accessible to all constituents, regardless of political persuasion. We are going to maintain our party offices at the constituency or other levels separately, independently, and financed through our own efforts. In the case of St. Patrick's, for example, East and West, we have been out of office for the longest while, since 2013, I believe, almost 8 years now. And we have been able to maintain an office in Sutter's. Recently, we moved into a new office on the Main Street, that's the E.C. Franklin building. And we have to be creative and find ways to ensure that we pay the rent, that we pay the bills, and that we pay the people who do our political work in our party office. So we have to disentangle the state from the party. Now, what is happening here is being done deliberately. It is being done to create in the minds of the people the idea that the party is giving them a job, or the party is giving them a voucher, or the party is giving them a $300 at the end of the month. Those things do not come from the party, they come from the state. And the NDC, in its commitment to improving the functioning of our democracy, will ensure that we disentangle the party from the state. Citizens must be made to feel that they have an equal opportunity to access the resources of the state, regardless of who they support. This approach is currently being used to blackmail, and I'm going to use the word even to bribe people into supporting the ruling party. People are browbeaten. They are made to feel that if they do not attend party events, that if they do not vote, that they are not entitled to certain things. I met a young lady the other day, about 3 weeks or so ago, and she said to me, thanks to the ruling party, she have a job, they gave her a job. So I asked her, which NNP office are you working with? She says, no, I'm working in the hospital. I said, I don't know that NNP owns any hospital or operates any. You were given a job with the government of Grenada, and your salaries being paid by the taxpayers, including yourself. So we have to go on an education campaign, on a civic education campaign, back to the schools, in the society, in the communities at large, to get people, to wean people from the idea that it is a party doing something when, in effect, it is the government, the representative of the people, carrying out those different activities.
On that note, Mr. Andall, let's take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and ask more questions, field some questions for our viewers and listeners. This is To The Point on Classic and GBN. We'll be right back.
We understand it can be hard getting from the bus terminal to the Kirani James Athletic Stadium just to get your fresh fruits and veggies. But guess what? Your troubles are over. Enjoy a free bus shuttle from the bus terminal to the temporary market at the Kirani James Stadium
every Friday and Saturday until the end of March.
Let us buy local, eat local, and support our local market vendors.
Friendly faces, sweet exotic fruits, fresh veggies, local spices. Just what you find when exploring our bustling Grenadian markets on Fridays and Saturdays. That is why GBN, Maggie, and Just Cool Media have teamed up with the Ministry of Works to bring you Maggie Market Vibes. Meet the people that feed us, clothe us, and keep the economy going. Plus, get your Maggie seasonings and other products weekly at the best prices. Maggie Market Vibes, live from markets across the island, Saturdays from 9 to 11 a.m. on GBN television and social media platforms. Maggie Market Vibes. Your Saturdays are about to be turned up. GBN Television News at 7, a pulse on all things Grenadian. Look out for our new features through expanded synergies with our media partners in Barbados, St. Lucia, Jamaica, Trinidad, and beyond. Capturing the latest in news, sports, weather, and entertainment. Credible, informative. Thank you for making us number one. News at 7, live, Monday to Friday on GBN Television, Channel 7 and 11. K105.5 and 105.9, Hot 98.5 and 98.7, GBN Television Facebook page and YouTube channel, and www.gbn.gd. GBN, with you anywhere and everywhere.
COVID-19 spreads from person to person through the droplets that are produced when someone coughs or sneezes, which makes it easy to spread between people in close contact. Now let's get prepared to stay healthy.
To reduce your chance of catching or spreading COVID-19, practice these simple everyday preventative.
Welcome back to The Point. We're speaking with NDC's caretaker for St. Patrick West, I could say Honorable Mr. Joseph Andall. Ms. Andall, before we went to the break, you mentioned something that brought a thought to my head in terms of, in your discourse about separating or disentangling party from state. The public service and the employment of our public servants. We've heard discussions that the public service is oversaturated. Does the NDC, or do you have concerns about the public service, the way that it is employed with the people that serve as public servants?
Yeah. Sometime probably last year or may have been the year before, the Prime Minister made a statement. And in fact, just going through my archives sometime last week, I saw the newspaper headline where the Prime Minister said that the system is broken. And I had to shake my head when he said that. After all, he has been the one presiding over the system for most of the past 30 years. If you're the captain of the team and the team ain't going nowhere, then the buck stops at your doorstep, at nobody else's. So he has admitted that he has failed the nation through the systematic destruction of the public service. NDC intends to turn the public service into a meritocracy, simply meaning that people will be hired and promoted based on their skills, their ability, and their competence. Political allegiance should not be a consideration in that. You see, while we may satisfy a party supporter and his or her family by putting them in a position where they can get some money, if that person is unable to fulfill the responsibilities that go with that position, the entire country suffers. So hiring and promotion will be based on merit. And that will be the case in the normal public service, in the teaching profession, in the Royal Grenada Police Force, and in every other sphere where government has control or influence. We do not believe in square pegs in round holes. The independence of the institutions must also be respected. There is a reason for putting in the Constitution certain institutions and granting them immunity from political interference. Our electoral system and process must be seen and felt to be impartial. Every individual or every political party getting into an election in Grenada must feel that he or she or it is not at any built-in disadvantage because the incumbent has the means to manipulate the process, right? So the independence of the institutions. Now, many people might say we are talking about things that do not affect people's belly immediately, but let me correct that misperception. Let us look at the Molinier Road. And if the allegations surrounding that road are true, then there is no more graphic and expensive example of what political tampering with institutions can cause to our country. Yeah? When you give permission for people to do things that they should not do, to build in places where they should not build, there are consequences. So what are the consequences of the Molinier road slippage? An extra 10 minutes of driving, more wear and tear on your vehicles, more time on the road, so increased risks of accidents and other calamities, loss of production and productivity, and the list goes on and on and on. Greater expenses for vehicle owners, more money to spend on parts, and the knock-on effect creates a huge cost that ultimately is borne by the taxpayer. So when our government makes OPI decisions, we all pay for it in the long run. So reintroduce a meritocracy in the public service. I spoke earlier about workers' constitutional rights to their pension. The NEC is committed to restoring that right. And it will not be done as a favor, but as something that government is legally bound to comply with. The independence of the institutions, independence of the Public Service Commission, independence of the Office of the Supervisor of Election, and any other office which is endowed with such independence by our Constitution.
It's now time to take questions from our listeners and viewers. The landline number is 435-2041. That's also the WhatsApp number. Please, only written messages on the WhatsApp. I will convey them to Mr. Andall on your behalf. And you can also post your comments, questions, queries, concerns on the GBN Grenada Broadcasting Network's Facebook page and the Grenada Broadcasting Network's YouTube channel. So let's go to our first caller. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, my dear Sister Blossom. Good
morning, Miss Jacob. How you do?
I'm fine. And good morning to my beautiful brother by your side. Brother, what is his name again? Brother Andall?
Mr. Andall, yes.
Yes. Brother Andall,
good morning, Mr. Jacob. Good morning and Happy New Year to you, my dear lady.
And Happy New Year to you, too. I wish everything for 2021 to be with you. But Brother Andall, let me ask you a question. You could remember when you all sell the electricity? You could remember that time? And you give it away for 80 years. Can you go for 80 years? You will never ever go for 80 years. That was a blunt mistake. That was a big, blunt mistake. And again, Brother Andall, that's why I tell people when you hear gonna at the top. Because when you say what you have to say, by the time you reach the bottom, it disappears. You could remember when the new National Party, they win the 4 seat? Let me tell you all something right now. When the new National Party, the last, and they only had 4 seats. Yes, the Honorable Dr. Kit Kuchel could have given you up in 2 years. But no, he said, leave you, let you go. Brother Andall, in truth, oh God, you must do something for the senior citizens. You remember when the representative for St. David, that was Dennis Lett was a wonderful fella for the New National, for the NDC.
So, Ms. Jacob, what's the question?
The question is, what I'm trying to explain, the question is why they do this kind of thing to give away the electricity for 80 years, please. And Brother Andall, answer my question, please, sweetheart. And you, Auntie Blossom, have a very blessed day. And Brother Andall, take good care of yourself.
Thank you, Ms. Jacob. You do the same. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, dear lady. Okay, our last question first. Why don't we do something for the elderly? Well, I wish to assure you, Mrs. Jacob, that even with the limited resources available to our party, we try as best we can to share what we have with the more vulnerable among us. So at the outset of the COVID pandemic, the NEC put together a care initiative staffed by active and retired medical personnel, young people, and others in the area of management and so on. And we were able to distribute food hampers, sanitary supplies, face masks, and so on. In fact, we had started with the resumption of classes for Form 5 students last year. We started a lunch initiative, carefully coordinated with the secondary schools and adhering to all COVID protocols. We started delivering the lunches, hot lunches to the schools. And when the authorities found out about it, they shut it down. So we have been doing things. Regarding the sale of Grenlec, I think by now, all discerning Grenadians are aware of the facts surrounding the sale of Grenlec. I will not go into very great detail, but let me say, first of all, the current Prime Minister and the current line minister with responsibility for Grenlec, Dr. Keith Mitchell and Mr. Gregory Bowen, were in charge of Grenlec prior to the NDC's coming into office. In fact, I believe that Gregory Bowen's tenure extended into the first term of the NDC. Mrs. Jacob, your son, as if you have been around long enough to know that when Gregory Bowen was managing Grenlec, putting on your light switch was like buying a lotto ticket and taking it to the bank as collateral. You were more likely to not have electricity when Bowen managed. Remember, Bowen spent about $2 million on used generators that never generated a single watt of electricity. All of these things now form part of our national debt. Remember, there was something called the Warrior Commission, which ruthlessly exposed the inefficiencies, the incompetence, the wastage under the stewardship of Gregory Bowen as manager and Keith Mitchell as minister responsible for Grenlec. There is, I have to call it a lie. I'm not calling you a lie, Mrs. Jacob, but there is a general lie being propagated that NDC turned Grenlec into a monopoly. From the time Grenlec was constituted, it has been a monopoly. Monopoly, the word mono, or the syllable, the prefix mono, means one, single, solo. So if anybody can tell me a point in Grenada's history when we had more than one commercial supplier of electricity, I will take my hats to you and I will give you all that I own in this life. But I'm confident because Grenlec has always been a monopoly. Good? So NDC did not create a monopoly. What NDC did was take away a company that had been wrecked and bankrupted by an incompetent general manager in Gregory Bowen, divested 50% of government shares, which are purchased by a foreign investor. So for all those who like to say NDC don't like foreign investors, this is a perfect example to counter that argument. And within a short space of time, Grenlec became one of the best run utility companies in the Americas. I visit Barbados, I visit Trinidad, Jamaica, and Trinidad is an example of a country blessed with natural gas and oil, and the frequency of blackouts and brownouts in Trinidad and Tobago is mind-boggling. Since Grenlec has taken over, since the 50% shares were acquired by WRB, businesses have
unmute your mic, Mr. Andall. Unmute.
Economy than an unreliable power source. Good? So rather than being castigated, the NDC should be commended for having the foresight to engage a company with a proven track record. Mitchell and Mr. Bowen into the envy of the Caribbean. This talk again about high electricity rates. The electricity rates in Grenada are comparable to those of any other country in our region and of our size. They talk now about they're going to bring down electricity rates. They had the opportunity to keep it down. You know what they did? In the middle of the financial crisis, they took away 50% of the concessions that Grenlec enjoyed, and naturally, not being a philanthropic organization, but a business entity, they pass on the cost to the consumers. So if the NNP government was serious about keeping electricity prices down, they would not have taken such measures. I am sure Mrs. Jacob is quite happy to know that she can call into GBN, that she can watch cable TV, because she has confidence in the electricity supply, and that confidence is generated from the fact that the NDC divested 50% and gave it to a competent company, and the entire transaction was totally above board. Mrs. June Purcell was in charge of it. You never heard her or anybody else saying, "I'm not ready to tell all you yet," because government business is the people's business.
A question on the YouTube. If election were to be called tomorrow and NDC came out victorious, I want to know if NDC is going to look to Cuba for the coronavirus vaccine.
We are going to look for whatever source is available, economical, and above all, safe. So, of course, we have developed very, very close ties with the Republic of Cuba over the years. They are part of our Caribbean family. We have good links with them. When I studied in Cuba many years ago, I met people who were born in Grenada, living in Cuba with their descendants. And so there is no reason why we should not consider a Cuban vaccine when available.
Facebook, Mr. Andall, as a past teacher who contributed a lot in educating our young ones, what advice would you give the unions on the industrial action they've been taking, especially the silence in classroom? And it's 4 weeks since it's been going on, and yet government is not budging. Do you think shutting down the country with civil disobedience will get the government's attention?
I believe that the trade unions and their members have certain constitutional rights, and that in pursuance of their objectives, they are entitled to take necessary measures to get safe. Myself being a teacher, I have participated in industrial action, including sick-outs and strikes, while both NNP and NDC were in office. I never looked at my bread and butter issues as partisan issues. So there was a time when I voted for the NDC, but I probably had the biggest placard in the demonstration. And people have to learn to stand up for what is right. People have to learn to not yield to psychological and emotional blackmail. Remember that the same teachers, many of them have children attending schools. Okay? Many of them, my son just distracted me there with some of his friends, so
no problem.
Please excuse it, all right?
No problem.
Yeah. So the teachers themselves have children attending school, and teachers are not wicked people. It is the same teachers who dip into their pockets and buy teaching aids, buy lunches, pay buses, give children lift in their vehicles, who give up their time and their resources to raise funds, holding tea and fare, bakes and saltfish sale. In fact, the only section of government workers who take the responsibility of finding monies to repair their workplace are teachers. Teachers are the only ones who give up their time consistently free. There is no complaint when the teachers stay back after school for 2 or 3 hours to give free lessons for CSEC exams, for CAPE exams, and for CPEA exams. There is no complaint when the teachers forsake their families to accompany the debating team or the football team or the knowledge bowl team on Saturdays, after school hours, deep into the night sometimes. So we have to be empathetic to the teachers and the public officers. We have a government that is dealing with them in a very dishonest way, and therefore they are justified in taking whatever measures they see fit within the confines of the labor laws of our country to achieve their objectives.
A question on the WhatsApp. Somebody on WhatsApp, are you aware of the EIA done before the start of the Breakwater project, as Mr. Steele claiming that studies were done by the contractor, and can your party seek to make that study public?
Well, let me go by what Mr. Anthony Boson stated a few years ago when asked that same question about EIA. Mr. Boson stated that there was no environmental impact assessment done because, in his words, it was an emergency situation and they could not wait for the amount of time it would take to do an assessment before implementing the project. Coincidentally, the Prime Minister
unmute.
And
go again from coincidentally the Prime Minister.
The Prime Minister contradicted Mr. Boson and said, oh, yes, we did a study of some sort. And, well, it would have been funny had it not had serious repercussions. Mr. Boson said that, don't worry, the environmental impact assessment would be done afterwards. Now, I know I've given somebody a posthumous award. Somebody achieved some great things in life, and a few years after they're dead, they get an award. Their family feels proud about it. But this is the first time I've heard about building a house and drawing the plan afterwards. So this, in essence, is what happened. And right now, a number of families, I feel it for the family that lives in that area of Mount Carolina called the Esplanade, nearby the malaria drain, that the destruction of the house is imminent. The access to the Hilarion Hope, well, almost the entire beach has been washed away, and a number of families have had to relocate because their houses have literally disappeared into the sea. So a priority for an NDC government would be first stopping or minimizing the destruction that has been brought about by that project, and secondly, looking for remedial routes, engaging our best scientific minds, and if necessary, bringing in people from the outside to see what can be done to undo a lot of the damage that has been caused in that area. And the lesson from that is an old one that we should have learned. A hurried bird never builds a good nest. When you try to do something to gain quick and cheap political mileage over your opponent, the consequences to the people can be devastating. So I wish to reassure the people of that area that whenever the NDC gets into office, their plight will be a priority for us.
Let me go to the landline for a final caller. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Blaster. Good morning, Mr. Andall. Mr. Andall is a big talk. When you all get there, it's the same problem. I remember one time a house was building close by the road, and I tried to stop it on the NDC, and I could have never stopped it. You know what the guy in planning told me? It's a ticklish situation. Right? I said, boy, I can't do nothing. It's a ticklish situation. Because the same thing when I go there, all they're just talking, all they're doing the same thing. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Thank you, caller.
Right.
Enjoy yours as well.
First of all, I have no idea what the caller is talking about. But even if we assume that what the caller is saying is true, does that caller believe that because wrong things or inappropriate things may have been done in the past, that we should continue doing them? Don't you believe that the party you support, having had that experience with what you allege the NDC did while in office, should not have repeated it, and on an even more disastrous scale? We have to get away from always looking to justify wrong by citing other wrongs. No amount of them will make it right. What we need to do is look back at what went wrong and take steps to ensure that we do not repeat wrong things and bad things that were done in the past. That would be an indication of real progress, an indication of growth as a nation.
Any final thoughts, Mr. Andall, as we wrap the program?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the GBN for affording us this opportunity to discuss matters of national of national importance. I think my mind is probably on the so-called National Health Insurance Scheme that never came off the ground. And by the way, the NDC will be hosting a virtual town hall meeting on this coming Sunday. I believe it will be the 28th of February from 6:30 p.m. It will be duly advertised, and the Zoom links will be provided so that people can participate. One of the main focus of it would be the current healthcare situation and NDC's plans and visions re-healthcare. So I would just like to summarize some of the things that we spoke about this morning. We are committed as a party to the restoration of pension rights for workers. We are committed to working collaboratively with the labor movement and with all other interest groups to ensure that the best possible outcomes are arrived at. We are committed to development, but planned development, supervised development that is in tune with a comprehensive national developmental plan. We are not going to get into this ad hoc government by project thing that is so common these days. We are committed to rebuilding the independence and the competence of the public service, and that will be done through respecting the necessary institutions, ensuring that political interference in the hiring and promotion process is minimized and eventually eliminated. We are also going to ensure that we leave a Grenada better for the generations that come after us than the one that we've met. And in general, our thrust is reaching out to other Grenadians, whether they be individuals or groups, reaching out to them with a view to getting to a common position, a common understanding, a common appreciation of where we are and what we need to do to get out of the doldrums and to put Grenada on the path of sustainable, long-term development in which all Grenadians feel that they are and that they have a part. So once again, thank you for having the MC in the program. We appreciate your opportunity and we look forward to continuing to get a chance to share with the populace our visions, our plans and ideas.
Thank you very much, Mr. Andall. Thank you so much for joining us, and the platform is always available. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, same to you and the listeners and viewers.
Thank you so much. NDC's caretaker for St. Patrick West, Joseph Andall. We thank him so much for being our guest. And thank you, our viewers and listeners, for tuning in to The Point this morning. Always appreciate your time, your listenership, and your viewership. That's the end of my time with you for today. The Mid-Morning Buzz is up next. I haven't seen JC as yet, but I'm sure he's just around the corner. Have yourselves a safe, productive Tuesday. I'll be back tomorrow, God willing. Continue to be COVID-19 smart and be safe out there. Have a good one.